he would roar around town as he did, assigning things all over town. Assigning them to people that he thought were about to write a piece about his sex life.
Right.
So that meant that he would assign every kind of flea-bitten gossip columnist to write a piece I didn't want, and I would kill it. People go, did he sexually harass you? It's like, no, actually, it was much worse than that.
Welcome back to The Breaker Pod. This week, coming to you from Il Tonillo in Midtown East. For over 38 years, Il Tonillo East has seamlessly blended tradition with modern Italian cuisine. Cheers the owner, Benny Bello, for inviting us down. If you would like your venue featured on The Breaker Pod, get in touch. Breaker@breakermedia.com. My guest today needs no introduction, but I'm going to give her one regardless. Tina Brown has spent 4 decades doing what almost no one in the media could pull off anymore, making institutions consistently relevant. At Tatler, Vanity Fair, The New Yorker, and Talk, and The Daily Beast, she didn't just edit magazines, she detonated them, rebuilt them, and forced the rest of the industry to keep up. Her sensibility became a form of currency, a mix of social intelligence, high-wire talent management, and an almost feral instinct for the story everyone will be talking about 3 days later. She now authors the must-read Substack, Fresh Hell, and co-hosts the annual Truth Tellers, the Sir Harry Evans Investigative Journalism Summit in honor of her late husband, the legendary journalist. Tina Brown, welcome to The Breaker Pod.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. Feral is a really good word.
It is a great word,
yeah,
right? Isn't
it's
it?
kind of slinky.
It's feral instincts.
Yes.
The new edition of Vanity Fair hit newsstands this week, the Hollywood edition, where I'm a contributing editor and obviously where you used to edit the magazine. Was there a cover or a story that you really wanted in your day, but you couldn't just get off the ground?
We sort of got everybody we really wanted to get. I never did get Mick on the cover. I always quite wanted Mick. We did lots of other stuff about the Stones, but I did actually kind of want a bear.
Did he turn you down, or what was the...
It was just elusive, something that nearly happened. But I got pretty much all the stars I wanted at the time.
I mean, there's been sort of some conjecture and talk about either Vogue or Vanity Fair putting Melania on the cover. What do you think about that?
I would have put Melania on the cover.
Right.
Definitely. I mean, Talk magazine, we had the famous picture of Melania stark naked lying on Trump's plane.
That's quite the shot.
Yeah, it was quite a shot. And it was we also had that shot, she's lying on the carpet of a fake Oval Office. So it was pretty prescient, as a matter of fact. She's not crazy about seeing. Yeah, she's not crazy about seeing that picture reproduced these days. But there she was. So I would have definitely. I should have put that cover. When I think about it, I should have actually put that picture on the cover. It would have been very provocative. Although they were only semi B+ list at that time.
And now,
and now it will be an all-time bestseller. The Christmas tree thing. I might have done something funny with that Christmas tree somehow. I don't know. There's something about Melania in the White House with that Christmas tree that there's a picture to be done with that.
The media world has been transfixed over the last couple of weeks with the Olivia Nuzzi, Lizza, saga. You wrote about it on Fresh Hell. Do you think someone like Olivia Nuzzi can come back from this?
I'm now just hesitating only because I did feel she could. I mean, I actually like Olivia, and I thought it was a great idea, in fact, for Mark to hire her at Vanity Fair, because I thought, so she had a kind of crazy, coup de foudre with Kennedy, but, give her a chance to come back because she's a talented writer. I must say that Lizza, her ex-fiancé, has kind of done a pretty superb job of kind of decapitating her in his kind of
Substack post at the time.
Yes. And indeed, I mean, the problem is that the book, if she had written a book that was a kind of snappy tell-all, right, she could have done like a heartburn, like Laura Ephron did when she was, jilted and, and when she had got pregnant and Carl Bernstein had an affair with somebody. She wrote Heartburn, and it was a really funny account of her sort of his mistakes, her mistakes, and it was a massive bestseller. Unfortunately, Olivia went for this kind of very pretentious kind of, I mean, I called it Ezra Pound in hair extensions.
I saw that. I got a laugh about
which
that.
was a little, tough, but that's the problem. But the book is not good, so that's the problem. So whether she can come back, I hope so, for her sake.
Who's the most misunderstood media player out there, media power player out there today.
Misunderstood in the sense of what?
Yeah, in terms of their public image does not tally with their, who they really are behind the scenes.
Well, I think Anna Wintour's actually always misunderstood as being sort of cold and aloof. I mean, I actually don't think Anna's cold and aloof. I mean, she's actually a very loyal friend. I mean, she was a fantastically kind to her late ex-husband, David Schaffer, who when he got Alzheimer's, and she was no longer married to him, and she hadn't been married to him for many, many years, but she really took over his entire care, and she built a little house for him in the garden of her estate in Long Island, and surrounded him in sort of love and laughter really till he died. And I thought that was just a really wonderful thing that she did, and had absolutely no obligation to do so, So I think she is rather misunderstood in that regard.
I think at one point she said she watched The Devil Wears Prada and she enjoyed it. Do you believe that?
No, but it's what you sort of have to say, right? I mean, you can't say, I went into my room and screamed into the closet. And,
into a pillow.
Into a pillow.
Rage.
No. I mean, you have to kind of smile glacially and say it was just wildly amusing,
Succession is a parlor game that is played at a lot of media companies, including Condé.
Yeah.
Who will succeed Anna Wintour, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that Anna has just made herself now so sui generis. I don't know what the company does, because it's almost like, without Anna, what is Condé Nast at this point? So that's a sort of mixed blessing for them. I mean, a triumph for her in the sense that, her brand, has sort of triumphed, but the magazine company is now kind of greatly diminished, actually. So I don't see what could happen. I mean, you need, it's really not Anna who needs to be succeeded in a sense. It's a kind of, I think it's sort of a new business vision needs to be brought in. It's really the CEO, actually, much more than it is, I think, the editorial part.
What are the media publications out there, media companies that you just don't get? You're like, what is this thing? I don't understand it. It could be like a Substack, or it could be a media company that, something that is a publication out there that you're just like, I don't understand this being a thing.
Well, I mean, there's now just so many. That is the issue. You've got like Puck and Airmail and all the rest.
Breaker Media.
I mean, I did kind of wonder how Airmail kind of succeeded. And now I discovered it didn't, But
as Breaker reported, it was losing about $5 million by the end.
So I mean, I never quite got that. I thought there was some good stuff on it, but I thought, what is this? Who's this for, and what's the business? So that really puzzled me. And then, so actually, it didn't really surprise me, but it surprised me that it kind of lasted as long as it did, essentially. So that was one of them, I think.
Which media institution still commands fear, out there? I mean, I think the media's fragmented so much. But back in the day, I think, people have said, if I got a phone call from, a publication that was being run by Tina Brown, I'd be running for the hills. Do you think there are there other publications that still command fear?
I don't think many people would like to hear, hello, this is Michael Wolff on the phone. So it's sort of more individuals, really. I mean, obviously, the Times is always going to make you kind of slightly gulp, I would think. I do think Emma Tucker has done a masterful job in reviving the Wall Street Journal. And I think what I'm most impressed about with Emma is that, in bold contrast to sort of Will Lewis at the Washington Post. Yeah. I mean, she just went in there without any kind of noise or fuss, essentially, just kind of
blew it up.
Just, revived it, blew it up, hired great people, made it immediately better edited, better stories, scoops, and it was like without any kind of like drama, all of it. And Will Lewis is still kind of sitting in his office, like sucking on his pencil, kind of trying to figure out what the vision is, and it was just great. And I think she's kind of a real star, actually, editorially.
It's funny, out of all the Brits, there was kind of that the Brits are coming storyline that seems to come around every few years. And it was like Mark Thompson, CNN, Sir Will at Walpole, and Emma Tucker at the Journal. And I think, I agree there that she's just done a knockout job.
Yeah.
Is there something that you were doing at the New Yorker, in your New Yorker era, that would be impossible to pull off now?
Well, I mean, I think that, in my era, of course, we didn't have, we weren't dumping stuff online. So right. That was obviously the excitement you could generate with a magazine, was that people would actually be running to the newsstand to get it, Mm-hmm. Whereas now, the problem is that you have to dump out all that content online, and then 2 weeks later, the magazine kind of hobbles along behind, which is really what sort of killed magazines in a sense. I do like the look of the new Vanity Fair under Mark Guiducci. I think that it's, I'm happy to see that, the kind of layout has gone back much more to the era that when I was editing. I mean, the design it's like he's restored that lovely, handsome, clean look, which I think is great. And I think he's clearly a player, which I like. You know, the editor of Vanity Fair has to be a player in the world of Vanity Fair, essentially.
100%.
And Mark is like, knows everyone, he's out and about, he's hustling. And I think he, you know, if you can pull off a revival of Vanity Fair at this point, I think he's the right one for him.
And the other thing I noted, you know, that I wasn't aware of before, that is chock full of luxury ads, which again is pretty important.
No. I mean, it's got to be a kind of gorgeous artifact as well. I mean, for some reason, the visuals in the preceding regime kind of collapsed, and I was very sorry about that because it was always a handsome, you know, certainly, I mean, our redesign was like really a luxury product, you know, and then Graydon also kind of maintained a really good visual look to the whole thing, and it just kind of got really cheap looking, and now it's looking sexy and luscious.
What is the art to editing a magazine like that, or the New Yorker, or any of the others that you've...
I firmly believe, I mean, there are some people who think that magazines are just kind of articles with a staple through it, and that is just not what I believe. I mean, I think it's the whole... it all has to come together, you know, the visuals, the headlines, the captions. I mean, all of the little things are what create a feel and a tone, you know? I mean, I used to spend as much time on the contents page as anything else. I would literally sit down myself and, you know, write the headlines for the contents page. We'd choose those pictures, the captions, the pull-out quotes, you know, that, you know, pulling out a quote and sort of sticking that in the middle of a piece to make people...
That level of detail.
Yeah, and it was that level of detail. And so that there was this feeling like, you know, when you go to the fruit store, as it were, and you're kind of feeling the oranges and the apples, people do this first read where they go through the thing and they're getting the feel.
Right.
So in that first feel, you have to give them a sense of, is this a magazine with surprise and sex appeal and what do I, you know, so you have to give them all of those things in the stuff that actually isn't the article. And so they want to read the article, essentially. So as far as I was concerned, the whole art of magazines is seduction. You know, it's about those seduction points that make people read the piece and stay with it and then turn into the next one. So that means mix as well.
Right.
It means like, you know,
you were famous for the highbrow, lowbrow.
Yeah, but I also
mix.
feel it's really what everybody wants, you know. And sometimes, I mean, the New York Times magazine has got some very good things in it very often. But, you know, I don't want to go from, as it were, you know, the menopause into Ukraine, as it were, into Alzheimer's, into like, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, it's Christmas, you know what I mean? It's like, give me some.
It's my weekend. I'm just trying to chill.
I'm just trying to chill. I'm just trying to like get away from all this, you know. And so I actually think there's a big pleasure principle in magazines. Right. You've got to give, it's pleasure. It's a luxury. It's like something you're doing for pleasure. So you want to make people want to sit down and have a cup of tea. Being British, that's what I like to do. Yeah. And, you know, and sort of, this is my treat, you know. So I think people have sometimes forgotten that treat factor.
You once said that all great careers have one big flame out. Mm-hmm. And I think you've spoken about this before. Yours
yes.
was Talk,
yes.
Which was owned by Harvey Weinstein.
Indeed.
What was that experience like?
Well, it wasn't the best career move, was it? Let's face it, Lachlan. I mean,
because you were editor of the New Yorker.
I was
at
editor
that
of the New
point.
Yorker, exactly. I was
like riding high,
exactly.
And then you get an offer from Harvey Weinstein.
I do. Now, I mean, in fairness to me, at that point, you know, with the New Yorker, I really wanted to make it into more than a magazine. I wanted to make it into books and movies, and
which is kind of what they do now.
The thing was, I was ahead of my time with that, and I tried to persuade Cy Newhouse, who was, you know, chairman of Condé Nast. I would say to him, look, I don't think that the New Yorker can just be a magazine. I want to raise the subscription price. He had it at $12 you know, it was incredibly low subscription price.
Right.
I said, look, it could be like HBO. People would really pay for the New Yorker, and it took years for him to change his mind. I mean, finally, David Remnick, who agreed, like it took him several more years after I left to actually get Cy to do that. So I was kind of frustrated because I thought, you know, it needs to be more. You know, it should have a book company and all this stuff. He didn't want to do it. And so at that point, I went out for dinner and ran into Harvey Weinstein. And he said...
As one does.
Yeah, as one did at that time. Don't forget, this was the Harvey of
course, yes.
Shakespeare in Love.
Mary Max. And
he was the ultimate cultural tastemaker.
Sure.
And he loved what I was doing in the New Yorker. And people sometimes forget about Harvey. I mean, in the effort to make it seem like... you know, people only ever had any time for him because of his bullying and his power and all the rest of it. The truth is that when Harvey was in major wooing mood. The thing about him was he'd always read everything I'd, done, or he'd seen everything you'd been in, and it was genuine. He was a voracious culture consumer, actually. And he loved the New Yorker, and he was, he could quote me articles, everything about it. He could go through a whole issue from memory. It was just amazing. So that's very appealing.
Sure.
And he said, trouble is you need to be more than a magazine. And he said, he literally parroted at me everything I'd said that morning.
Yeah, right.
So I kind of obviously felt very attracted then when he said, why don't you come and do this with me, start a magazine. And actually the book company that we did was a hugely successful venture.
Talk Books, yeah.
Talk Books was incredible.
You had a bunch of bestsellers.
Yeah, we had like 12 bestsellers, I think. It was incredible. So that really worked. I mean, I brought in Jonathan Burnham, who was in London and, of course, now runs HarperCollins, was a wonderful hire, actually. And he was brilliant. And Susan Mercandetti, who was at ABC at the time, and the two of them, they kept bringing in just great bestsellers. So that really worked. But the magazine, Harvey just, the problem was he was such a nightmare.
You're right.
In every way. And the worst thing that he did, and it really was an evil crime, and you would understand this, he would roar around town as he did, assigning things all over town. Assigning them to people that he thought were about to write a piece about his sex life.
Right.
So that meant that he would assign every kind of flea-bitten gossip columnist to write a piece I didn't want.
Wow.
And then those flea-bitten gossip columnists would call me about the piece, and I would kill it.
Right.
And they'd hate me a lot for doing that. And so, I got worse and worse press because all the time I was killing these pieces.
You're in the columns being
Yeah. So, I mean, that was one of the things. It was like, people go, did he sexually harass you? It's like, no, actually, it was much worse than that. He went around, signing all these goddamn pieces that I then had to kill. And so there were times when people would say, yes, I'm writing a book for you, for Talk Books. And I would think, no, you're not. Who the hell are you? And I would say to Jonathan Burnham, somebody came up to me and said, oh my God, he said, yes, I'm sorry, but that was Harvey. Yeah.
Said,
I said, well, who is that? It's like, it's the stewardess on the planes.
God.
So it was like, oh my God. It was like, she'd obviously seen so much that she had to be given a book contract,
Yeah, her memoir.
Her memoir, right. Yeah, exactly. So those were the kind of agonies, and it just really put me off my stride, I have to say, it really did.
What's some smart advice that you would give a legacy media company right now that they absolutely won't do? Some smart business advice.
Well, I've got to say that, one of the things, it's very fashionable to kind of trash legacy media, but there's a lot of scoops coming out of legacy media,
True.
Frankly. I mean, Emma, as I mentioned, Emma Tucker at the Wall Street Journal. I mean, she did the great birthday book from Jeffrey Epstein. The Washington Post, despite Will Lewis's, cavorting, published that really good piece about the Hexith and the boats and the bombing of the second bombing.
Producing incredible journalism.
I mean, and CNN has been doing really good things, actually. I mean, that was quite a lot of good stuff is coming out of legacy media. And I do not think that they should think that there is ever a better solution than doing great content.
Right.
Because as we've seen with both the New Yorker and the Atlantic, I mean, people will still
pay for
really good content.
And for
they
original
will.
Reporting.
They absolutely will. But I think that you've got to be, what you're doing is sort of multi-platform. You do have to be that, and it's got to exist on many platforms. But again, both the New Yorker and the Atlantic are doing that. I mean, they've got podcasts, they've got book stuff, they've got video stuff. So they're all, they're not just sitting there sort of just putting out print magazines, wondering where they went. I mean, they are actually adapting the best ones, I think.
Why are tech moguls, firstly, so annoying, but then secondly, so bad at being media barons?
Because they're so bloody arrogant.
Yes.
That is the reason.
Right.
They're so arrogant.
They think they know best.
Yeah, I mean, and I really do think that the worshipping of tech barons has jumped the shark, right? I mean, I was at Dealbook this week, and Alex Karp of Palantir was on. He was just a big, cavorting, blowhard, egomaniacal, enraging, actually, with his arrogance towards, Andrew Ross Sorkin. And okay, yes, he's really smart. I'm prepared to say, I worship you for your technological genius. You're going to change the world. You write code. But what do we get back in return? We get absolutely, they're not interested in our world in a serious way. I mean, media business is a serious business, like any business. So why don't they bother to learn from, leading journalists, leading practitioners, how to do it right? They just don't. They think they can crash in. I mean, look what happened with Mark Benioff and Time, right?
Right.
So Mark Benioff was mouthing off about all the things he was going to do at Time and all the rest of it. But he really never bothered to understand, or contribute anything that I thought was of any value really to Time, except, I mean, he loved to show up, wearing a funny hat in Davos, you know what I mean? But where was the kind of serious thought about how to sort of actually turn Time into more than Time, for instance? It always ends up being cut.
Right.
Cut down, cut the editorial, always just cut the editorial, shrink the budgets down, and they don't pay any attention. I mean, for instance, Washington Post.
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos. I mean, it had a fantastic live division. I mean, Washington Post Live under Kathy O'Hearn, who's a wonderful producer, who was I've known for many years. She really developed it with Marissa Farina, who was a great sponsors person. They became a real profit center. They did great live events there, really good salons and video stuff, and they've just shrunk all the budgets. Everybody's left. They've gone. Kathy quit. I mean, and it's now like not a profit center of any kind. And it was like you took something and it was actually great, and you just broke it. Why? I don't know. Only because you didn't pay any attention to it.
Right.
So I guess I feel. I don't know why they do that.
I mean, the same can be said. I've just written a piece for this edition of Vanity Fair about the California Post and the LA News Wars. The same can be said about the owner of the LA Times.
Undoubtedly.
Dr. Patrick.
Well, I know. Well, he appointed himself the sort of CEO, and he shouldn't have done.
Right.
And, I mean, he's obviously a brilliant doctor. I mean, there's no question that he is one of the leading medical minds, I think, in the US, actually. But he doesn't know anything about journalism, any more than, the journalists at the LA Times know anything about,
getting a patent research for a medical breakthrough.
But there's a kind of arrogance there, and I think both journalists and artists are getting more and more fed up with it. Actually, I mean, because you just see things that are it's the same in the entertainment world. I mean, what's happened to HBO in a sense is
right.
Here's the crown jewels of TV really, and since the takeover with Time Warner and so on, I mean, it's just been. I mean, it's been so diminished as an asset when, in fact, it was a thing of beauty.
Speaking of celebrity culture, you've shaped that for decades. What's the biggest myth about how celebrity power actually works?
Oh, gosh, what the biggest myth about celebrity? Well, look, I mean, I think to be at the top of your game as a celebrity, you've got to be worked pretty hard, actually.
Right.
I think one of the mistakes is I think some of the sort of influencers imagine that if you do your trout mouth pout, and stand there in lycra or whatever, that it's somehow going to mean that you flash forward to fame and fortune. Because actually, to be good is really difficult, and that's something that Meghan Markle never understood. Essentially, she thought that she could simply become an influencer and everything would follow. But I mean, all the women that she really did admire, I think, whether it's the Michelle Obamas or the Gwyneth Paltrows or whatever, I mean, they really worked for it. I mean, they really put in a lot of sweat equity and it never changes that. You can't ever have success without working all the time. And all the greats just are such hard workers that I think people don't really understand that. And I love any sort of book, play, movie that gives you process, that shows people a process. There was I think that Susan Lacey's Billy Joel, documentary was wonderful because, he's a great songster and you think of him in this, but they work on the artistry and the practice and the time and the seriousness that goes into being, a major hit like that is prodigious, and I think that's somehow been under-recognized by a lot of people who are calling themselves influencers.
You touched on Meghan there.
Yes.
You've written, a couple of books now about the royals. What do you think happens there? Do you think there is a world in which, she's now going back to acting? Do you think Harry will go at some point back to, the UK, back to, his dad and his brother, and maybe, there's a split?
Well, I mean, look, I don't know anything about, the state, as it were, of the private, situation has to be. It would have to be that they didn't, weren't getting on anymore.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't hear that, actually. But I think what's tragic about it is really that, they were two talented people in their own way. I actually thought Meghan was very good in Suits. I mean, she was a good actress, actually. And perhaps going back to acting is what she should have always done, because she actually was a very good actress and might have become like the next Jennifer Aniston if she'd sort of really
worked on it.
And chosen the right projects. You've got to have,
right.
It's all about judgment, isn't it? You have to choose the right projects and have great people, listen to people, which I think is the major problem. They don't listen. And I think with Harry, I mean, I think that although it was frustrating being in that royal sort of cage, look what happened when he got out of the royal cage. It's like he had all these great people in the palace. I mean, they might have been irritating and fusty, but they knew how to plan things for him. So when he launched, for instance, he's very effective in Invictus Games.
Which has been a huge hit.
Huge hit, yeah. And a wonderful thing, for veterans and wounded veterans and so on. But he did it with the aid of smart, wise, practiced people who could call on anybody to come in and make that into something that worked. I don't think that at the Invictus Games, if he'd done it now with kind of a PR company, would have had nearly the effect that it did when he launched it as a royal. So I think I think that although he might not articulate that, I think that's what you're seeing. I think he's come to understand what the background of the palace did in fact do for him. That it gave him guidance, it gave him structure, it gave him a role, essentially.
What do you think is the biggest underreported tension in the royals?
Well, I think the whole question of where the monarchy goes next, I mean, more and more questions are being asked about the real structure of the monarchy, like the constant questions which Andrew's scandal has triggered. Is like, wait a minute, he's living in this massive 30-room mansion and he pays a peppercorn rent. And then more and more you're getting these questions about like the houses and the real estate, the holdings. So I think that they're really going to have to figure out what should a modern monarchy, look like, essentially.
You touched on Andrew there. That kind of brings me into Epstein. When you were editing the Daily Beast, Conchita Sarnoff did a fantastic series about Jeffrey Epstein. It was really kind of one of the first times the journal had really gone deep on Jeffrey Epstein.
It was the very first time she was, and she wasn't actually a journalist. She was a human trafficker campaigner.
Right.
So she was investigating that topic. She wasn't really investigating Epstein. She stumbled on Epstein essentially by investigating that topic. And did these amazing pieces. And
I had Vicky Ward on the pod a few weeks ago, and we were talking about how, as a young reporter, I was with the New York Post, and we were sitting off Epstein's Upper East Place, and we got a couple of frames, and we ran a story, but no one cared back then. That was like 2011.
Right.
Fast forward, a few more years, I'm at the Daily News going out to all these, Peggy Siegel parties. There's a bloke at the back of the room that's, Jeffrey Epstein. Again, no one cared.
Yeah, he's a slip in.
But then Me Too and, Trump, the whole story blows up again. Are you surprised that it keeps coming back around this time, obviously, with Donald Trump?
It is fascinating just how sticky it's been.
Yeah.
And I think, I've thought about it quite a lot. I mean, obviously, you've got the human faces and voices of these young women. And I think it does really play into the huge sort of resentment of impunity, rich people's impunity. And in fact, I think Mo Khanna, that congressman, actually, I think it was him who coined the phrase the Epstein class, which actually is a very good phrase.
That's a good phrase, yeah.
Because essentially that's what those emails are kind of flushing out, are all of these people who sort of circulate around, they're in the best places, they travel constantly. I think the great Substacker Anand Heradas mentioned, I think in one of his pieces, that, they're people who, the first thing they say is, where are you? Because they, you could be, they have so many houses and places, and, they're people who've got multi choices in their lives, and that's one of the things which, combined with the sort of the sexual disgust of what the horror essentially of what Epstein was doing to children, which really penetrates people's psyches in ways that are very emotional, I think, because a lot of these scandals, so-called or malfeasances of Trump, it's all gone in a second. You can't even understand it. It's like people just can't keep up. But what sticks is like, I understand these were rich people a rich man abusing girls as young as my daughter, always got away with it, you know, and then there were all these other people who knew about it and didn't care. And they're still out there. They're still at the top of the tree, you know. They never got any kind of, amazingly, none of them except for Ghislaine Maxwell has ever really paid any kind of a price for it. So that's why I think it stuck.
You mentioned those emails. One of the names that came up on those emails was Michael Wolff. He's now hosting a podcast for the Daily Beast called Inside Trump's Head with Joanna Coles. I think it's their #1 podcast. How does that make you feel, the current state of the Daily Beast? And
well, I do think Joanna Coles has really revived the Beast in a way that's, you know, it's much, much more exciting to read these days than it was before she came aboard. I mean, it's incredible, really, that Michael Wolff...
He was also acting as a publicist.
Well, he was. I mean,
Jeffrey
when you
Epstein.
consider that Olivia Nuzzi is being kind of crucified for being the Bobby Kennedy's, you know, publicist, essentially. What's the difference, essentially, with Michael Wolff? I don't know whether Michael will have to pay any kind of a price for having been revealed, essentially, as a consigliere of Jeffrey Epstein. It's kind of amazing that he... we haven't yet seen whether that will stick to Michael in ways that you might have thought. I mean, he's very talented, Michael. There's no doubt about it.
Do you think the key to a successful career, much like Michael has, much like you have, much like I have, is continually reinventing yourself?
Absolutely. You have to keep on reinventing, and you have to do it more and more now. I mean, I feel, you know, when talk closed, I sometimes look back and think, well, I was an early adopter. You know, everything went belly up for me. Sort of about 3 or 4 years before it went belly up for everybody. I mean, the whole business is now like shredded, you know, so I had to kind of get ahead of that curve, you know, and I started the Women in the World Summits. I mean, for 10 years I did all this stuff I called live journalism, and I was actually, you know, really one of the first to understand like that live events were a very good alternative, if you like, to producing interesting content.
Which now live events are a huge thing for every media company.
That's right, everybody's doing it. I wanted a live events arm of the New Yorker, of course, and Sidney House didn't want to do it. But I mean, I love producing live events. I mean, I feel that writing and producing are very similar skills, you know.
Well, you now do this with the Sahari Summit.
I do. The Truth Tellers Summit, which is absolutely great. Yeah, it's about investigative journalism. And, you know, we've had everybody from, you know, Woodward and Bernstein to Yulia Navalny, you know, and I mean, it's been.
Who would you like to have next up?
Well, I'm just about starting to think about it and thinking like, who are going to be the journalistic heroes?
Maybe not Michael Wolff.
No, I do think that conquering fear is going to be a big topic because
for sure.
One of the things, the awful parts of today is the self-censoring now.
Well, this litigious environment we live in where it's the chilling effect,
That's exactly right. The chilling effect is, I think, going to be a big discussion at the Truth Tellers next year, because we have to kind of put steel in everybody's, you know, spine, because we have to know that they're going to come for you, and how are you going to respond? I mean, the BBC now is in this horrendous bind. Which has been so undermining for their whole kind of prestige and so on. So, you know, I mean, ABC, you know, they just shelled out, what was it, $16 million with that.
CBS.
CBS.
Now, it was another,
you know, for no reason. They
check.
didn't even fight it.
Yeah.
I mean, they basically said...
They folded like a cheap suit.
They folded like a cheap suit, and essentially it was shakedown money, and they paid it, you know, which has been a really very bad thing for media indeed. But and lesser media who do not have that kind of checkbook, which is most people.
Well, it creates a precedent, right?
Yeah.
You know, someone says, "Oh, you know, if they caved, well, why don't we try it on?"
Right. That's exactly right. And also, you know, there's so many very, very good, you know, smart, you know, small publications that have no budget for this kind of attack.
Breaking Media, maybe.
Yeah, Breaking Media. When they
Please don't send us a legal letter.
I know.
We almost got to Christmas without one.
When they come for you, Lachlan, you're just going to have to like wave the white flag. You know, what are you going to do?
I'll be going around the streets with a bucket, just collecting donations.
We will do a GoFundMe for you, Lachlan.
You've been brilliant over the years, Tina, about identifying talent and nurturing talent. What do you look for in a journo, in a writer?
Well, I look for a voice, first of all. You know, that's the first thing. Have they got a voice? And that's what I realized when I first met Dominic Dunn, you know, who was a out-of-work film producer. And I sat next to him at a dinner at Marie Brenner's house. And he started talking about his life and the murder of his daughter. And he was going to LA for the trial. And the way he talked, I mean, I could just tell he had this fabulous voice, you know. And I said to him, would you keep a diary, you know, of that trial? Because it might make a really interesting piece. Vanity Fair. And he did. And of course, it became a very celebrated piece about his daughter. And he then became our sort of...
he went on to cover OJ and all the big trials.
The Menendez brothers and Klaus von Bülow. No, he was superb. So I do look for the voice, and it's not just about how people write, it's how they think. You know, are they going to be provocative? Do they have interesting ideas? And I love investigative journalists. One of the things that I've come to realize is that all investigative journalists are the same people. They are these kind of like the classic investigative journalists that I now have. You know, now I'm doing truth tellers. I'm just drowning in them.
Right.
Are these kind of like curmudgeonly, skeptical, you know, never going to say thank you for anything kind of people, because that's what's made them ask all these questions. Right. You know, so if you take someone like a Seymour Hersh or like a Michael Isikoff, or I mean, they're very similar in personalities in a sense, you know, because they're sort of these difficult cuss in the newsroom, you know, who's always sitting there thinking, oh no you're not, oh no you aren't, you know, and they want to go out and ask questions. And I just love those kind of minds, actually. I like those people who question everything that's put to them. One
of the talents you identified at Talk was Tucker Carlson, who was writing for you. What the bloody hell happened to him?
Well, I know. It's absolutely stunning. No, I had two political correspondents. One was Jake Tapper, and the other one was Tucker Carlson. A tale of two talents. Tucker was so talented. You know, he's a wonderful writer, actually. I think there is, I mean, I've often thought about this. I think that what changed Tucker was when he did the TV show with Paul Begala on CNN, and they had Jon Stewart came on.
Right, and
Jon Stewart really did do a takedown of Tucker. And you could see it's really worth going back and looking at that video. Right. Because there's Tucker in a bow tie in those days, and he was like the kind of university wag, you know what I mean? He was like the funny, silly, charming, slightly, you know, irreverent guy who was great company or whatever. And he thought that was going to be the kind of conversation he was going to have with Jon Stewart. But Jon Stewart, he suddenly begins to realize that Jon Stewart is really going for him. I mean, going for the jugular. And you can see him, like, his whole face changes and he's being humiliated on the air, and he suddenly realizes he's being humiliated. And he was really humiliated by Jon Stewart.
Not too dissimilar to Trump being humiliated at the White House Correspondents'
Right. I do believe that humiliation is a critical factor in anger, you know, and resentment. And it was really after that Tucker began to change. And I think that it made him hate liberals.
Right.
Just as, you know, Trump being roasted by Obama made him, he looked around that room of the White House Correspondents' Dinner and saw what, in his mind, the entire liberal establishment laughing at him. Correctly, he thought that. I was sitting right behind him that night.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. And I saw his neck go from pale pink to sort of magenta, you know. And you could just tell that he was steamed, you know. I mean, what happened when you got back to his hotel, God alone knows. I mean, the whole suite was probably, you know,
thrown apart. Yeah.
But humiliation is a key motivator, I think.
It seems to me like you're having an absolute blast on Substack with Fresh Hell. Is this the future of media?
Well, I said the future of Tina Brown. Yeah. I've actually, you know, I've had a huge amount of fun with Fresh Hell, actually. We're now at nearly 75,000, which is really nice. And it's kind of addicted to it now, actually. Yeah. It's my little thing. And I have all these wonderful subscribers who write fascinating, interesting comments. And I just like the tension of having to find something to write about. I need that discipline, you know. But I also it's really fun to look at those statistics a lot. I mean, they're very good.
I geek out over them as well.
Totally great. Yeah. I mean, I will, as soon as I get back tonight, Lachlan, I will go into my room and I will open up the Fresh Hell stats.
Right.
And I'll think, wow, while I was doing the Breaker podcast, I earned $250.
Not too bad. Yeah.
And I'll be very pleased with myself. And it's so pathetic to say that. But it's just fun. It's like having a flutter. It's like having a little gambling habit to see, you know, what does well, what doesn't do well, and then you brood about why it didn't do as well and vow to be do better next time. Yeah. And then if Drudge Report picks you up, you feel your heart leap.
Yeah.
And it's so I love it. It's perfect for my moment, and And I like being able to just be unfettered. I mean, you know, the fact is that when you write, the big problem when you write for these, you know, the serious media, essentially, I mean, you have all these people, layers of people suddenly saying
weighing in, write this, don't write that, write it like this.
That's like, well, I don't think you should write. Are you sure about that? And like, by the time you're done, you're sort of exhausted. All the good jokes have gone, you know. Right. And doing the Substack, I mean, it's just like I just like write whatever I like, and people seem to be responding. Actually, it's great.
David Remnick was someone that you identified as a writer. You took him in at the New Yorker when you took New Yorker over, and then you nominated him to be your successor.
I did.
Who should succeed David Remnick at the New Yorker?
Oh my gosh, wow. Well, I mean, I can't even. I mean, I think David's got a good 5 years in him, you know, so I don't think we need to think about it now.
He certainly seems very hungry and very...
I think he's been doing some great stuff recently. That piece he published by Caroline Kennedy's daughter.
Oh, phenomenal.
Tatiana,
that was a gut punch. That came out on Saturday at the same time as the Nuzzi thing was kind of imploding. Exactly. And I was like, I sent it to a couple of people. I was like, guys, like real world stuff going on here. And this is like, just whatever.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And you know, it was the kind of piece that really could only kind of have that kind of impact in the New Yorker.
Yeah.
And I think that David is, you know, and he's grown, you know, that in many ways, you know, with the podcast and books, and you know, so he's actually done a tremendous amount. So I'm not really seeing who would come next. I fear about that a lot. I mean, I hope David gets to choose who comes next, you know, I really do, because the wrong editor of the New Yorker, I think, could be really damaging at this point. You know, you could destroy the magazine very quickly, actually. It should be terrible.
I have to ask you this, who is the best media gossip out there?
Am I looking at him? Am I?
I haven't got the break of the door on today, but maybe.
I mean, I do. Like, it's funny how many people send me I go like, I subscribe, you know, it's like, I don't need you to send me the link. I have a really great friend, actually, who's edited a brilliant news site in South Africa called the Daily Maverick, and his name is Branko Brick. Have you ever heard of him? Branko Brick, his name is.
That's a great byline.
He's actually Serbian, so it's sort of spelt Brzic, and he's always WhatsApping me your pieces. And it's like, your reach is far and wide.
Oh, I'm big in Cape Town. It sounds like. What would you blow up first if you were handed a legacy title in 2026? What would it be, and what would you blow up first?
Well, depending on what the title is. I mean, you've got to adhere to the DNA somewhat. Well, I mean, I just think there are so many incredible writers out there that I would love to have that shopping cart full of new writers. I mean, when I went to the New Yorker, I had the divine task of having to kind of restock the larder with new writers. And I got Malcolm Gladwell, found Jeffrey Toobin, Anthony Lane. I mean, all these wonderful writers. Yeah, it was phenomenal. But I do see them all out there now, too. I mean, you know, the thing is that when I've got this Sir Harry Evans Fellowship I started.
Right.
And it's an award that we give to a young, up-and-coming investigative journalist who then gets to work for 6 months at Reuters.
Fantastic opportunity.
Fantastic opportunity. So we had like 800 entrants this year. And I'm reading these entrants, and they're really incredible. There are these kids all over the world, and they're doing fabulous stuff. I mean, fantastic stuff. I could literally fill a newsroom every year with these young talents, and I can see that they're young talents. I know they're young talents. I only get to discover one. You know, we've had under the first one, our first Sir Harry Evans fellow, Waylon Cunningham, got a Pulitzer.
Wow.
Yeah, which was pretty great. He joined a team at Reuters, and they worked on a piece, and he got a Pulitzer with the team. So that was a pretty good one. Last one, Pete McKenzie, superb talent. I mean, he's just such a good journalist. You just know it. And our newest one is, she's a young Indian investigative journalist who is fabulous. Her name is, now I can't remember her name. No, it's not Nahindra. It's, I'll remember it in a second. But she's going to join us very soon. And it was very exciting to be able to give it to her.
Tina Brown, thank you for coming on the Breaker Pod. You can watch this pod on YouTube. You can listen on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your pods. You can also subscribe to Breaker at breakermedia.com. That's breakermedia.com. And we'll be back next week. Cheers.